My guest today was born into a devoutly Roman Catholic family. After high school and a tour of duty in the U.S. Navy, he entered Notre Dame University, where he received a degree in journalism. He worked as a reporter for a year, after which he felt the call and entered a Benedictine seminary. After 8 years in the seminary, he came to the conclusion that he did not have a vocation to the priesthood. He left the seminary and returned to Notre Dame as a professor. He taught at a Chicago area college and then joined a public relations firm. He was married in 1965. At the time of the birth of his fourth child, Roe versus Wade was passed by the U.S. Supreme Court. The infamous decision shocked him, so that he, from that point on, dedicated his life to the protection of the unborn and to fight against this monstrous law. In 1980, he established the Pro-Life Action League in Chicago, Illinois. The Pro-Life Action League has been responsible for shutting down close to 100 abortion mills, and as a result has saved thousands of lives. Presidential candidate Patrick Buchanan has called him the Green Beret of the pro-life movement. I'm Julius Smetona. This is What Catholics Believe. I feel privileged to welcome to What Catholics Believe Mr. Joe Scheidler, abortion pro-life activist, founder of the Pro-Life Action League, and Father William Jenkins again, regular guest, pastor of St. Teresa of the Child Jesus Church in Parma, Ohio, and publisher and editor of The Roman Catholic. Joe is the author of Closed, 99 Ways to Stop Abortion. He's also the producer of a film called Meet the Abortion Providers. He has appeared in a number of television programs, ABC's Newsnightline, Crossfire, The Phil Donahue Show, Face the Nation, Good Morning America, and the McNeil Lehrer Report. In addition, he is a regular guest columnist in the USA Today. Joe, one aspect of the abortion question which is, I think, suppressed by the media is the fact that many women face considerable psychological and physical pressure to have abortions, not unlike Red China. I can remember my wife telling me of an incident where a woman was almost 9 months pregnant and had agreed to undergo an abortion, and at the last minute she told the doctor, "I've changed my mind. I don't want to go through with it." He said, "Oh no, you're going through with it." Gave her anesthesia, attempted to abort the child, and he was successful in simply amputating an arm. The baby was born alive, and she is now suing the doctor. I can recall a specific passage in your book. I'd like to quote from it about your experience with some of this, and I'd like to have you comment on it. You said the following here. Joe Scheidler states that the woman involved in an abortion can be an innocent victim, just like the baby. He has witnessed young women being physically coerced into entering an abortion clinic. One was dragged in by her scarf, another was escorted into the building in a hammerlock.
Yeah, I've seen all that and a little more. One time we were doing a film in Chicago, and we didn't want to be right in front of the abortion clinic because we didn't want to embarrass the people going in and the counselors, so we went out into the park and filmed from there, and my back was to the abortion clinic across Michigan Avenue. And while I was telling the story of coercion, they focused in on the front of the abortion clinic, and there was a young woman, a young black girl, with a red tam and a red scarf, talking with our counselor. And suddenly the boyfriend came out. He had gone on into the abortion clinic. He came out, grabbed her by the scarf, and physically pulled her in through the revolving door into the abortion clinic. I've seen, as you mentioned, the hammerlock. I have seen women who were being forced by their husbands, their boyfriends, young girls who begged us to get them out of the abortion, to try to take them somewhere, and we have. We have almost kidnapped people to keep them from having abortions, but they are forced, and that's why I think it's the woman having the abortion frequently is a victim just as much as the child. It's true that some are, and probably most, are very aware of what they're doing. if they're on their 6th or 7th abortion, as we find sometimes, or as in, I just got back from Russia recently, 30 abortions is not uncommon for a woman over there, then it's not so much a victim anymore, although perhaps a victim of circumstances, finances, the inability to find room in the home for another child, things of that sort. So we never, in any of the bills that we've introduced, had a penalty on the woman. Mm-hmm. But the penalty is on the doctor and on a society that solves its problems by murdering its posterity.
When you say that you've almost kidnapped people, you're talking about women who want to go with you, who want someone to take them out from underneath all this pressure.
That's right.
And give them a chance to think for themselves.
And they will ask us to help them get away from this tremendous pressure. You get an angry father who beats his wife and beats his children and says to the daughter, you have this abortion or you get a beating of your life, or you can't live here. What's a 15-year-old going to do, a 14-year-old going to do? So I say the pressure sometimes can be so great. So we have compassion for the woman. The abortionists are always talking about the compassion is to let her have the abortion. Many of them don't want an abortion. They want help. Abortion is a cry for help. And we offer help. We talked 27 women out of having abortions one morning in Chicago at an abortion mill on South Michigan Avenue. Those 27 women had not been set in concrete. Their decision to have an abortion was not that firm, or we wouldn't have been able to talk them out of it, get them help, and let them start on their way to having their baby. So this idea that a woman votes with her body, that's not true. Our strongest supporters, we find frequently, and I have 2 women working for me who had abortions, are the women who have had abortions, know how bad it is, know what the consequences are, and now are pro-life.
Well, abortion is presented as some kind of a service, right? But people forget, and I think the pro-abortionists want them to forget, it really is a business, isn't it?
It's business, and in our film, Meet the Abortion Providers,
We'll take a look at that a little later on.
They say that over and over again. From the beginning, from the ad that goes into the newspaper or the telephone book or on the bus or train, until that woman is ushered out of the abortion mill, it is a business project. It is a sales pitch.
The hard sell.
A hard sell. Carol Everett says that you talk the woman into abortion. You don't talk her into adoption. You don't talk her into keeping the baby. You talk her into the abortion because that's how your salary is paid. Sales pitch.
There's a question of leadership. Typically, polls show that maybe 10% of the American population is firmly against abortion. Maybe 15% of the population is adamantly pro-death. And 75% of the population is for some abortion, more or less, but they're kind of, they can be influenced. Now, the sad thing is that amongst Roman Catholics, those percentages are about the same. And my question is, and our Lord often refers to the people as the sheep and the apostles as the shepherds, what has been your impression of the role played by the American bishops in the pro-life struggle when, you have a situation where, aggressively pro-choice Catholic politicians are, for the most part, not excommunicated, where the catechism has resulted in 85% being in favor of abortion in certain circumstances?
Well, as a Catholic, I have been disappointed in the bishop's leadership role. Many of them follow pretty well. After the laity go out and do something, some of the bishops say, hey, maybe I ought to do that too. We've had some good bishops, Bishop Boston Vaughn, Bishop Ott, and others have come out, and the bishops have made some strong statements. I wouldn't say I know any bishops who are pro-abortion, but as leaders, as those who are supposed to set the example, they have been disappointing because it's too much talk and not enough action and not enough talk in the right places. The fact that 47% of Catholics voted for Bill Clinton, who was an avowed pro-abortion candidate for president. There wasn't any question about that. He promised the abortion leaders that he would sign executive orders to undo the work that it had taken us 20 years to do. And he would sign their bills. He would promote the Freedom of Choice Act, etc. Well, his second full day in office, he did just that. The only thing he has accomplished, apparently, was to overturn the restrictive abortion laws. So, and yet, Catholics, apparently, with a clean conscience, voted for this person who is a pro-abortionist. And so they weren't getting the message. We tried very hard at our church, and I go to a respectable church in Chicago, to put out position papers, and we were maligned for that. It was called political junk, and we were called, I forget what term the pastor used. That shouldn't be. We should be hearing some of these things from the pulpit, at least the fact that abortion is a mortal sin, and it carries the special sanction of excommunication if you're involved in an abortion. And to some degree, those legislators who vote for abortion, who sign abortion bills, as Mario Cuomo does as governor of New York, should be disciplined by the church. If not excommunicated, at least disciplined, told it's questionable whether you're able to receive the sacraments. And yet, there's so little of that. That the bishops really have power, and they're not using it. Nobody else really has power.
Yeah, there's, I think...
Not like that.
Why aren't they using it? Lack of courage? Lack of faith?
It's probably a lack of both of those things, but I think also it is fear. It's fear of having an image of not separating church and state, which seems to be the first commandment now, is separate church and state totally. Don't let God have any influence at all. Don't let morality have any influence. Denounce your religion when you go into politics. And the bishops are very political. And many of them are afraid that if they do something like this, the media is going to say, you're imposing your morality, you are disciplining this person with church laws, and they have taken a vow to uphold the Constitution, which now permits abortion. They're afraid of bad press. Almost all the answers I have gotten have been essentially political. It wouldn't look good, it might not work, it wouldn't be expedient. And my question is, but is it right? Don't you come to a point somewhere along the line where you don't do it because it's expedient, you don't do it because it looks good, you don't do it because you get good press or bad press. You do it because it's the right thing to do. My problem is, how can these people be in the state of grace, receive the sacrament of the Eucharist worthily, when they are involved in the killing of children, a defiance of God's law in a very major way, and not give scandal? I'm scandalized. I went to Mass at St. Matthew's in Washington on what's called the Red Mass, the Sunday before the Supreme Court goes back in session. Here were all these lawyers and judges, and I saw Justice Brennan, who had helped write the abortion decision with Justice Blackmun, even though Blackmun got his name on it, go to communion. And here's a man who's responsible for 30 million deaths, and he goes to communion. It's given to him by a bishop, and I just wonder, I was going to yell out, this is a sacrilege, but I had my two daughters with me, and nobody to take care of them when I went into the slammer, which I would have, of course.
What would they have done if Adolf Hitler would have tried to receive communion? What would they have said to the bishop who would have given him communion?
I'm sure they would have had some excuse that he might have just slipped in the confessional or something. I don't know. It's very hard. I've written letters. I've gone to see the Holy Father. I gave the Holy Father a list of American politicians, Catholics, so-called active Catholics, members of the Knights of Columbus and so on, who are deeply involved in abortion. You don't just have to be an abortionist doing the abortion to be involved in abortion. And yet, I gave this list to the Holy Father, asked him, not necessarily excommunication, but a discipline, a meeting. Sit down with these people and talk to them and tell them, if they don't know, that abortion's still wrong. So I don't know. I'm very disappointed, but I'm not despondent. I still believe in the grace of office. And I have had an experience here in Ohio some years ago where after Mass, an attorney and I went to see the priest, and we begged him to come to the Planned Parenthood abortion clinic in Cincinnati with us to picket. And he started talking about the seamless garment and Sandinistas and the atomic bomb. And he just had all this whole litany, capital punishment. And I said, okay, okay, but what about today? We're asking, well, abortion's one of those, one in the litany. Could you today come and pick an abortion clinic? And then we got the same, he'd just come back from Nicaragua, and things were bad there. And so I gave up. I walked out, angry. And so did the lawyer after he tried his legal expertise, and he didn't get anywhere, and we went to the clinic. About an hour into our picket, who comes walking up the street but this young priest? And I said, see, you can never discount God's grace. He touched him.
That's great. You're watching What Catholics. Just switch to one of your videos we promised our viewers we'd see a little bit called The Abortion Providers. Maybe before we can switch to it, you can just tell us a few words about it.
Well, Meet the Abortion Providers grew out of a need that I felt that our activists in Chicago needed to hear the abortionists themselves say, look, guys, we know what we're doing. We're killing babies. You know, we know it's a baby, but I wanted the abortionists to tell us this, and who would know better than somebody who had done the surgery, so to speak. Also, I wanted them to see that our methods work, that going out in front of an abortion clinic, going to an abortionist's home, stopping an abortionist on his way to the abortion clinic, say at the rest stop or something, and surrounding his car, and all these little things that we do, work. They get people out of abortion. And also I wanted them to see that nobody is hopeless. So I brought in 9 former abortionists who are now on our side. And they told their stories. Every one of the doctors who did the abortion, somewhere in the testimony they gave, and this took 2 days, said, I'm a murderer. I kill babies. I'm a hitman. I do a contract on a child paid for by the parents, and so on. They did that. Spontaneously, they said that to us. The women who'd had abortions told about how they carried this burden. And the abortionists told us what it's like. And so I didn't have to speak for them. I didn't have to say, I'm a Roman Catholic, therefore my church tells me, and so on. These were the abortion. None of them were Catholics, incidentally. And so some of the excerpts we have here are simply pieces out of this film, Meet the Abortion Providers, and I don't know if I've got it in two speeds now. We got an hour program and a half-hour program. They're basically the same. And we're showing them in the schools. We're showing them on TV. Anybody wants to order a copy, we've got them. But these are some excerpts.
Maybe we can switch now to our excerpt from Meet the Abortion Providers.
Killed my baby, and I'm still not through that. And how difficult it is for all these women, because you see, I believe every woman, whether even if she's not physically harmed, is harmed by abortion.
And I would work up there, and this woman forced her daughter to come in there, and she was a second trimester, probably about 15 weeks. And they had inserted the laminaria the day before, and she was in there, and she was miserable, that poor girl was. And she was really upset. She kept going to the bathroom, and obviously there was something wrong with her physically. And when she went into the bathroom the next time, all of a sudden she started screaming at the top of her lungs, "It's a baby! It's a baby! Mama, mama, mama!" And she was screaming at the top of her lungs in the middle of our clinic that she's going to be scarred emotionally from having seen that baby in the toilet, because that's where it landed.
I was told that one of the pro-life problems is that we talk too much about the babies being ripped apart. We show terrible pictures. We dwell on these too much. But what are we supposed to do? This is the reality of abortion. I'm there to tell them the truth. Babies are being ripped up. Yes, these babies do look like this after an abortion. And yes, it does hurt your baby. And most of all, it does affect the women.
There are no words to describe how bad it really is.
Joe, maybe you could share your insights with us and our viewers about the psyche of these militant pro-abortionists. I've encountered them publicly on a number of occasions. I can remember we once sponsored a rosary, well, once, we do it on an annual basis, a rosary procession in reparation for the national crime of abortion. And I remember the particular day, there was a group that preceded us, some Youths for Life, and they had a group of pro-abortionists chanting slogans. It was a cold, not excessively cold day, but there was a freezing rain, and they were there for about 1 hour, just standing in the rain, getting drenched, screaming out. Then they were ready to go. They saw us coming, praying the rosary. They screamed the worst blasphemies you could imagine, and again, just chanted with fanaticism, with zeal. I mean, it was frightening. I never saw this kind of intensity in any political movement from anyone else as I did from the pro-death brigades.
We run into this every Saturday at the clinics. We go out and try to say a rosary and counsel the women, and as you mentioned, blasphemies, they attack the rosary, they attack the pictures of the Blessed Mother that we take out and so on, use obscenities, describe the most graphic sexual activities real loud over their loudspeakers and all to try to drive our people away. And I've wondered about that too. Why this intensity? Why this zeal for evil? And so just recently I had one of these ladies on the phone who has now come to our side, and she's going to be appearing in April at our new Meet the Abortion Providers Conference in Chicago. And I said, hey, when you were on their side, why the zeal? Why the enthusiasm? Why the hatred of us? Why the hatred of God? She said, because this is our church. This is our religion. The abortion clinic is our temple. And this is where we hold our sacrifice. We serve Satan. And to serve Satan is our religion, and you come there just as the people walked into the St. Patrick's Cathedral and desecrated the Eucharist on St. Patrick's Day, or whenever when they're there in New York. That's the way we feel about you. You're desecrating our church. Now, this was coming from a former abortionist. She's on our side now. But we have to realize there is a deep involvement in Satanism among, now I don't say all, some of them are just in business, they make money. But in some of these fanatics, and that's what you ask about the radical pro-abortionists, to them it's a religion. They are serving evil. And one of the things you have to do when you serve Satan is to take an innocent life, a life of somebody who probably won't go to heaven or, can't be saved because they haven't been baptized. Apparently
that's right. The Satanists prize the unbaptized infant as being the highest form of sacrifice.
That's right.
And frankly, I think that, to me, there can be no other explanation. It's like a satanic zeal.
Oh, it is. It is. And people who have studied Satanism, and believe me, it's around us. I know people think you're a crackpot if you talk about it, but we know it's going around. We see the evidence in the woods and the sacrifices and all. But I talked to a police officer recently who made a special study because that was his beat. He was chasing these Satanists around because they do commit murders and things. And he said that it's just a perversion of religion. They have their God. They want to become saints in their church, and to do that they have to serve their God, who is Satan. They want a high place in hell, if you want to put it that way. It's weird. But let's look at that's what evil is. Evil is the perversion of good. And so it goes, you're never just standing still. You're either becoming better or worse. And they make a religion of becoming worse, which they consider good.
You know, Joe, you mentioned that serving Satan involves taking an innocent life. Well, they destroy the innocent life of the child, but they also give Satan something that he appreciates also, and that is they destroy the innocence of the woman. Mm-hmm. And Satan would just as soon destroy innocence. Bishop Sheen said that is the very definition of evil. He said that's the difference between an evil man and a bad man. He said a bad man does bad things, but for other motives, for personal gain or whatever. But an evil man does bad things for the sake of doing evil. And he actually, his goal is to destroy innocence. And that is really the height of serving Satan. And this is what these abortionists are doing with the women. You've counseled probably hundreds of women personally on their way into the abortion clinics. I would
try to.
What do you tell them?
You know, you let the Holy Spirit do it for you. You know, they say don't think too much about what you're going to say, and you really have to have a few things ready, but mostly something will come to you. One time, now, ordinarily you don't want to wear your religion on your sleeve. That can sometimes get in the way, but one time I saw a couple going in, and they had been through 2 sets of our best counselors, and I thought, there's no hope here. So I just said, hey, wait a minute, the day you kill your child's a big day in your life. We ought to say a prayer about this. I said, you know any prayers? And the guy looked kind of dumb, and I said, how about the Lord's Prayer? And he said, oh, you mean the Our Father? So I knew he was a Catholic, and like you say, Catholics are having as many abortions. I said, let's say the Our Father. Let's say it slowly and meditate on it and They did. And we all stood there, the three of us, and said the Our Father. And when I came to the end, I said, deliver us from evil, amen. I didn't add thine is the king in the park, because these were Catholics. And so I said, now let's just say that one more time, only you think about this real hard. Deliver us from evil. Can you think of anything more evil than what you're about to do? A mother and father taking their child in, paying a hitman to kill it. That's got to be the bottom of the barrel of evil. Now, I'm going to say a prayer when you go in there that the next time you need God real badly, you will either be heard by him or not, depending on what you do today. And they looked at me, and they looked at the lady standing there with her clipboard. They were late now. And they went over to her, and they said, let's cancel out today. And they walked away.
That's beautiful.
Now, that was a prayer. Sometimes I've simply gone up to the guy, and I've said, hey, Dad, you know, I got a little boy.
Joe, we're out of time.
We're out of
gonna
time.
Be back
and this
next
was going to
week.
be a good one.
We're going to be back next week. Today's guest was born into a devoutly Roman Catholic family. After a brief tour of duty in the Navy, he entered